Hi, friends. Over the course of the last couple of days and my two most recent series, I have been creating a wider range of content than I have in the past, and I've also been talking about one of my favorite things in the world, jump chains. In my most recent video in my jump chain series, I talked about a very specific jump doc, and I explored it in great detail. It is something that I very much enjoyed. It was also a much longer video than I initially anticipated it being. And in today's video, we're going to be taking a hopefully shorter amount of time to go and talk about what it is like to both begin and actually do a jump chain. When beginning a jump chain, there are two angles that a author will have to think about. The first angle is the real world angle, as in how it is that you mechanically navigate and progress and eventually complete the actual jump chain as a experience that you, a real human, are going through, and also the in-universe slash in-setting angle, which is what does a jump chain look like to the actual jumper in the story. One thing that I personally like about jump chains is that they are rather intimidating looking, but they are deceptively simple from a real world point of view if you want to prioritize efficiency. If you want to prioritize efficiency, the only thing that you need to fill out in order to begin a jump chain is the very first jump doc that your jumper will be utilizing as the sort of map for the perks and the items that they get. Now, if you want a proper, fully equipped jumper, there are other little things that you are going to have to fill out and other little things that you are going to need to take into consideration. But at the very least, if you want the most efficient way to begin a jump chain, the process is simple. You select whatever setting your jumper will be visiting first, and you fill out the jump doc for that setting. Before we go any further, I think that it is important to mention something that a lot of people who are new to jump chains or who are just beginning jump chains may not realize. There is actually no hard rule that says what a first jump must be. In strict theory, any jump could be taken as a first jump. Although obviously there are jumps that are designed either as first jumps or as beginner friendly jumps that are probably better than going into something like Warhammer 40k or Marvel or the Elder Scrolls as part of someone's first jump. I have previously talked about the generic first jump by Ursaline the Mad Bear and the Pokemon Trainer jump by Quicksilver, but in addition to those as intended first jumps, there's also a series of tutorial jumps by Deverosphere, who is a member of the Reddit community and is someone who has actually commented on one of my past videos. I wanted to make sure that I gave them the shout out that they deserved because their tutorial jumps are very well designed, and I would highly recommend going to any of them that I have seen. I have seen the tutorial jump chain, I have seen the Super Smash Bros. Tutorial, and I have seen the Bethesda tutorial. I don't know if there are any others in that series, but I recommend all three, and all three work perfectly well as first jumps. At the end of this video, we are going to have a conversation and I'm going to show you various supplements that are important for properly equipping a jumper before they go on their first jump. But for right now, it's important that we think about things from an in-universe slash in-jump point of view. And what I mean by that is it's time to think about the actual characters, very specifically the jumper and their benefactor, that are going to be involved and that are going to be the most consistent characters that most jumpers will probably encounter throughout their chains, namely themselves and their jump chans. For a number of people in the community, the way that they designed their very first jumper was to just use a self-insert. If you have never heard the term self-insert before, a self-insert is simply a version of yourself that is inserted into a story and allows you to experience that story yourself without thinking about creating a fully distinctive background and personality set for someone to go on an adventure. that is a perfectly valid way of going about things. That is certainly how I initiated several of my jumpers, although I didn't do exact self inserts because many of my jumpers are very malevolent people. I very much enjoy writing evil characters, and I think it's a lot of fun to think about how an evil being would go about navigating a jump chain. In fact, one of my favorite things of jump chains is that if you want to be the baddie, you can. If you want to have the baddie's power sets, and if you want to have the baddie's cool stuff, you can. I think that that's really neat, and it's in fact one of the reasons why jump chains are so fascinating to me. I think it's really neat to see jump makers go and think about the methods and power sets used by enemies. But that is only one approach to make. Lots of different people have made fictional characters into jumpers. One very common thing that I've noticed, especially among some of the more prominent jump story people, people like myself who write works of fiction and fan fiction that use or are inspired by jump chains, is that we will often take existing fictional characters and we will make them either companions, which are not jumpers but are jumper like to some extent, or we will make them fully fledged jumpers. In some cases, the stories will even be fully centered around a prominent fictional character who, for one reason or another, gets to go on a jump chain. Benefactors are decidedly more complex to think about and sketch out than jumpers themselves are, which is part of the reason why some jump story people, or people who write stories that are at least partially inspired by jump chains and jump chain mechanics, will avoid doing benefactors altogether. But it's worth noting that benefactors are the source of fiat backing, and they're the reason why it is that jumpers can navigate the multiverse in the limited capacity that they can, so they play an important role. That said, the simplest way to do a benefactor is to simply do what Quicksilver does when Quicksilver created the Pokemon Trainer Jump Chain, which is to make it a random omnipotent being, which is a term that you will sometimes hear in isekai stories or in general choose your own adventure things. It refers to a creature that has unlimited power and just exists randomly and does mischievous things. ROB can also refer to random omnipotent bastard or random omnipotent other cuss word that will reflect their personality traits. But in that case, what Quicksilver did is they created a random omnipotent being that is simply bored and wants to watch television in some capacity. So they have decided to create their own television by hiring kind of a jumper and sending them to different places and giving them the ability to have all sorts of very cool abilities and things like that. That is absolutely one perfectly valid way to do it. It explains their motives, it explains their hands-off nature, it explains how it is that your jumper can do the things that they do. It fills in all of the most essential qualities. It also theoretically creates a way for a benefactor to become gradually more involved in the story as things progress and as the story matures and develops. And I'm using the word story, but I'm referring to all jump chains. I'm not just referring to a jump chain wherein someone is actually writing it out, which is what I like to do. I like to share details of my jump chains, but unfortunately, with that, there is a problem, because writing out stories that take place over the course of 10 years, 10 years is a surprisingly long time when you are trying to write out a story. And that's the reason why many different jump authors and many different jump story makers do things very differently. There's some people wherein they'll write a single chapter or like a quick handful of chapters that snapshot 10 years. I understand that approach, but I'm not personally a huge fan of it. So sometimes what I'll do is I will have my jumps last a little bit less than 10 years. In some cases, maybe a year or a couple of months in a setting before jumper moves on. But that is not me telling you how to do things. My purpose with these videos is never to tell people how to have fun. It is simply to expose more people to the fun that other people are having. and giving them the means by which they can begin to have that kind of fun themselves. But now I'm going to actually switch over to a screen recording, and we are going to talk about the different supplements that someone will need to fill out, as well as an example first jump. Friends, we are in screen recording mode. I am now going to show you two very important things, or rather, four very important things. I'm going to start off by showing you two critical supplements that Quicksilver made, the Cosmic Warehouse and the Body Mod, and then I'm going to show you two of the more popular supplements that replace slash improve upon these original documents made by Quicksilver themselves. Quicksilver, for those of you who do not know, is the original person behind Jumpchains, and when he was designing the very first Jumpchain, the Pokemon Trainer Jumpchain, he already had concepts in mind that would build upon them, and two of them were the Cosmic Warehouse and the Body Mod. I'm not quite sure what the order is going to be. It looks like it's going to be Body Mods. But the purpose of this is to explain two critical concepts for any jumper that is doing either a standard or as close to standard as possible chain, which means that it follows all of the default rules or as many of the default rules as possible. A jumper is not just a human who has been plopped down into a setting. They have been gifted two things in addition to whatever they get from their first jump that have been granted to them by the random omnipotent being that is overwatching their chain. The first thing that we are going to be looking at in this particular video is the Body Mod, which is their base human body. It is their simplest, most basic physical capabilities. And that is something that is going to be very important. Mod is a very important concept to jumpers and to jump chains in general. Your body's basic abilities are what you will always, always, always have on hand. And that is something that is very important because there are a number of circumstances and a number of conditions upon which you may be relegated to rely not on your normal perks that you purchased with choice points, but rather on your body's most basic abilities. If you are in a gauntlet, which is a special type of jump that reduces your body mod and forces you to take drawbacks in order to get points, you are reduced to your body mod. And there are a number of common types of drawbacks that reduce you to your body mod. Theoretically, depending on the specifics of a setting, it may be possible for someone to partially depower you, but even in those cases, most of the times you won't be reduced all the way to your basic body mod. But if you are, it is very important for you to understand what that looks like. And that is what this and one of the other supplements that we will be looking at today is for. So as you can see, here are some basic details. I will probably be doing a full video where I talk about this and the Cosmic Warehouse put together at very detailed length, like I have for the generic first jump and like I plan to for the Pokemon Trainer jump. So that is not the purpose of this today, but rather I want to simply show you what it is that this is and what it is that this looks like on a practical level. So as you can see, you can read through this right now. We are now at the bottom of it. I am also going to be putting a link to this and to the Cosmic Warehouse and also to the Essential Body Mod supplements and to the Personal Reality supplement, both of which are things that we're going to be looking at together. But in order for your jumper to be fully equipped for their very first jump, odds are even before you do your build for your first jump, you should go ahead and be looking either at this or the Essential Body Mod supplement and at the Cosmic Warehouse or the Personal Reality supplement. Hello there, welcome to the Cosmic Warehouse. I have mentioned this term multiple times throughout my other videos. The Cosmic Warehouse is essentially a giant place where you can store your stuff that you acquire over the course of your chain. I think it is a very cool concept. I very much appreciate that it is one of the things that has essentially always been here. I'm not sure if it's actually as old as the Pokemon Trainer Jump, but either way, it is one of the original things that was made by the originator of all of this, Quicksilver themselves. I really appreciate it, and we are going to take a quick glance at it. We are also going to be taking a quick glance at the personal reality supplement and at the essential body mod supplement, and I think that all of those are very important concepts. The purpose of this video is not to give you a deep dive into this, but rather to allow you to see it yourself, have some idea of what it is, and know that it is a thing that you can fill out. I recommend filling it out at the very, very, very beginning of a chain, so that way you always have it. It is worth noting that the supplements that we are going to be looking at are actually capable of being upgraded over time. At least I know for sure that the Essential Body Mod supplement is. I do not quite remember if the Personal Reality supplement is, although I'm fairly certain that it is. And what that means is that even if you do not fill them out at the very beginning of a chain, which is something that I absolutely recommend that you do, you are still capable of building upon it and expanding it over the course of your adventure, which is something that is very cool. Now we are at the bottom of this. If we go any further down, we will be looking at Quicksilver's infamous jump, and Quicksilver's infamous jump is exceptional. It's another jump that I very much enjoy, but we are not going to be looking at that for this video. Welcome to the Essential Body Mod supplements. This is one of the other documents that we are going to be looking at. This is a supplement that was designed by Swordchucks, and it is one of the most popular body modification changes that people can find. It is something that allows your body mod to grow over the course of your chain. There are some important rules that are worth noting in this particular document, but we are not going to be talking about them at length. I mostly wanted to show this to you all so that way you could physically see it. One of the things that is worth noting is that this document is a document that has been updated. I do not know when the most recent changes have happened, but I'm fairly certain that this is the most up-to-date version. I'm looking at version 1.11. If not, I'm sure that someone will let me know that that is not the case, and I will happily correct that, and I will probably pin that comment if someone does correct me, because I definitely want to be showing people the most up-to-date things that I can. We are not going to be taking a super huge look at this because this is a very detailed document and there are lots of different things that someone needs to know. If you ask me, filling this out and filling out the personal reality supplement are probably the most complex parts of preparing for a jump chain properly, but you do not have to do that. You definitely don't have to do that in the beginning. As I've mentioned before, theoretically, the only thing that you really need to do to start a jump chain is to fill out your first jump doc. We are going to be taking a look at one of those shortly. I mostly just wanted to have people's eyes on this. It is worth noting that the baseline mode is the recommended mode. You can read that at your own leisure. There are a couple of things that I definitely want to touch on right now. There are lots of different aspects of this that are worth thinking about and worth looking at. I do not know if this is true, but the essence section, I'm fairly certain, is a reference to the Essence meta Choose Your Own Adventure, which is another thing that I fully plan to have a deep dive video series where I talk about it, because I both adore the Essence meta Choose Your Own Adventure and I have also created several essences myself, and in fact many of my stories fuse both the Essence meta Choose Your Own Adventure and jump chains, because the stories that I like to write have powerful characters and powerful creatures. But as you can see here, there are essences that you can select. The main thing that I want to note here is I want to go down to the supernatural section so that way I can show you all an important thing that not a lot of people realize, or at the very least not a lot of people that I know and have spoken to directly realize. There are a collection of different subheadings for the types of perks that people can get here, but one of the biggest ones that we haven't seen yet are the supernatural perks. The supernatural perks are important because your body mod is what you can do when you are reduced to your most basic power set, your most basic physique set, your weakest, truest self that no longer has the protection of most fiat backing. That is very important because in gauntlets you are reduced to your body mod, but as you can see here, there is a section in this body mod supplement that says that these abilities are not allowed during gauntlets. This is not something that every person who has done jump chains realizes, and I get it. I myself was not aware of the fact that this section was disallowed for a while when I first heard of this. I am not super fond of gauntlets myself, so that is not a thing that would normally apply to me anyway, but it's definitely something worth considering. The last little bit that I want to show people is located near the bottom of this document. This particular section of the video has gone on a little bit long, but as you can see just by looking at this, there's lots of very interesting abilities that you can gain. I think that is very cool. I highly recommend that people do a deep dive into this supplement as well as into the personal reality supplements. I simply wanted to show people how it is that their body mods can improve over time if they do this, which is one of my favorite reasons to take this specific supplement, and I suspect is part of the reason why it is that the supplement has the popularity and staying power that it does. As far as I know, this is the most common and the most commonly accepted body mod supplement other than the base one. I think that over here we are nearing the section, the advancement modes. So this is a living supplement as opposed to a one and done type deal. There are numerous living supplements that will affect you for the length of your chain, and that is something that is worth considering. A supplement is not often a you fill it out once and you're done type deal, but based on the mode that you selected at the very top of this document, and when you were first filling it out, you will have a limited number of points to choose from and to use in selecting a handful of neat perks and body modifications that you can do to your base body, and then based off of what you select here in the advancement modes, you will be able to build your body mod over time. Personally, my two favorite modes here, and I know that you only select one, but these are my two favorite, are the heroic advancement and the questing advancement. It is worth noting that the questing advancement is actually the inspiration for an alt supplement that I have in mind that I've talked about before that I call the questing system. And in the questing system, you get an origin and you get the origins perks and items at the start of a jump, and then you can acquire the other origins perks and items over the course of your time in a jump, as opposed to using a build and selecting perks and items and having to budget everything carefully and only getting that once, but in exchange getting everything at the start of a jump, which is as far as I understand it, the default rules, where you get access to all of your perks and items at the very beginning of your time in a setting, unless it is something that is tied behind like a scenario or something like that. Multiple pages still left in this document, but I am actually going to give readers and viewers the ability to go and explore that on their own time. And we are going to go ahead and go on over to the personal reality supplement. The personal reality supplement is another quintessential supplement that replaces certain things that were in Quicksilver's original design and in Quicksilver's original sketch for a jump chain. Very specifically, this replaces the warehouse and a number of the supplements tethered to the warehouse that make the warehouse bigger and better, and in exchange replaces it with something that fuses elements of all of that stuff put together. This is another very specific type of living supplement that grows as your jumper grows. So unless you do something like the creative mode supplement, which we will definitely talk about in a later video, because I like to talk about the ways that people have fun, not tell you how to have fun. Um, it is something that allows you to grow in power, and it is something that becomes better the longer that your jumper is jumping and the longer that they are navigating the multiverse in the formulaic and structured way that their benefactor allows them to do so, rather than being something that is a one and done type deal where you fill out a document and then you never look at it ever again, aside from to remember what it is that your jumper is capable of and what their stuff is capable of. We are not going to spend a huge amount of time on this supplement because this is another very lengthy document, and it is a document that absolutely merits its own video. Unfortunately, any video that is not split into parts that would attempt to explore this would absolutely be a monster of a video. I did a video for the generic first jump, and it was over an hour. It was over an hour and almost an hour and a half long, and that is objectively too long. I very much enjoyed that video. However, I definitely know that the watch time is not going to be great on it, and that's fine. People who are interested will absolutely watch it all the way through, or at least they'll watch it for longer than other people will. But new people will also watch it and may become interested in jump chains. I actually have a friend who I've known for a long time, but who, because of my special interest in jump chains, is giving jump chains a chance. They very much enjoyed watching the videos and listening to me chat about this. I've talked about this on a whole bunch of different websites. I've talked about it on Twitter and on Facebook, and I've also talked about it on TikTok, which has been very fun because the number of TikTok jump chain people is incredibly small. In fact, when I was looking through it, I was only able to find one other person who actually did a jump chain related thing, and they were just creating a sketch of their jumper, which I thought was rad. I think that that artist is incredible. I very much enjoyed watching that TikTok, and I also enjoyed making a TikTok where I talk about jump chains just a little. I'm not very good at being succinct, as people can tell here. Also, now we are in the drawbacks section. You can take on these drawbacks and you will be able to get more points with which you can empower your warehouse. I personally think that that's really neat. I just said warehouse, but I meant your personal reality. Although it is still very much a warehouse. It's just a much bigger warehouse and a much radder warehouse. I extremely enjoy the personal reality supplements. I think that in a lot of ways, especially in the beginning and especially as your jumper gets more power, it will probably matter a lot more to them than their body mods will, because most jumpers will not often be reduced to their body mods unless they are the sort of jumper that enjoys gauntlets or things like that. That said, now we are going to go ahead and take a look at documents that I think would be a good first jump. I'll explain why. I'll help people fill it out. We are eventually going to do a video where I actually sit down and do a first jump myself. I will talk about the steps involved in that, but this is not that video. This video is just to help people get an idea for what it is that beginning a jump chain would look like and feel like. Okay, so in this setting, we will go ahead and say that the essential body mod supplement has already been filled out, and that the personal reality supplement have already been filled out, and that a jumper that we will just call Luciano has gone ahead and selected for their first jump the Super Mario 64 jump. They decided to go to a different place as opposed to the Pokemon jump or the generic first jump, for the sake of showing off that they know enough about a setting that they feel comfortable and that they feel ready to try and do something dangerous. Maybe it was a condition that their benefactor gave them, because this is a setting that is more dangerous than Pokemon, but not radically so. And the reason I say that this is a setting that is more dangerous than Pokemon is that this is a setting where a conflict is already happening, because the fact of the matter is that the power level of Pokemon is far more powerful than this, but theoretically someone who goes to the Pokemon Jump could just go into their warehouse or could just live in their hometown and be completely fine. But in this, a major conflict is already underway at the start of the jump, and it is assumed that the jumper will just dive in. Now, it's worth noting that unless your benefactor puts some sort of conditions on you that keep you moving and keep you engaged in the plot, there is actually no reason to assume that a jumper will just go ahead and do that. I am simply doing that for the sake of creating a narrative moving forward. We are not always going to assume that a jumper in any given thing in a video that I create is the same jumper, but I'm going to go ahead and say that just to have some fun, just so I can show you the momentum of a jump. This is the Super Mario 64 jump. It's by someone named Cthulhu, and they are a member of several different Jumpchain communities. They are also a very good at Jumpchain maker. There's a reason why I chose this as a first jump. I wouldn't really recommend this as a first jump personally, but it is a jump that is in a cool enough setting, and in a setting that isn't wildly dangerous. This is not the most dangerous Mario game, that someone could go ahead and do this as a first jump and probably be completely fine. Here is the intro blurb. Peach is talking about this intro blurb isn't actually narrated by Peach, but it talks about the basic storyline and gives you your choice points, and then we get to go down to the origins. It's worth noting that this specific jump does not have you get to choose your own age, gender, and location thing. I assume that with this jump, you are just going to go ahead and start in the courtyard of Princess Peach's castle, just like you do in the video game. And now we are at the origin section. We're going to go ahead and say that Luciano wants to become one of the Mario Brothers, or be a Mario Brother-like entity, which is a callback to one of my earlier videos. So they select the Plumber origin. You've been invited to the princess's castle, though by the time you reach it, Bowser will have pulled yet another zany stunt, and it'll be time to get to work. Best put on your best overalls and caps, because it's time to flush. As a plumber, you are human, or possibly one of the species that looks remarkably similar to them. And now, very cool, we get to move on forward. As you can see, here are the discount rules. We are going to talk about the discounts, items, and perks, as well as drawbacks, because I am going to say that this character is going to invest all in the plumber perk line, and that they will get the free plumber item. We'll talk about what that means in just a second, but discount rules are an important thing for you to be aware of, especially if you are doing a first jump that is not one of the assumed first jumps. So it's not generic first jump, and it's not the Pokemon trainer jump, or it's not one of the tutorial jumps by Devros. So, as you can see, here are the discount rules. 100 CP perks and items are free, and everything else is half off to their respective origins. What this means is that Luciano, the jumper, will be getting the Jump and Kick perk for free, as well as the Goomba Stomper perk for free, and they'll also be getting the Cap item, which we will talk about once we get to the item section, for free. I'm going to go ahead and say, for the sake of simplicity, that that's the only item that this jumper will be getting, and instead that this jumper will do the power gamer thing that I talked about before, of wanting to focus on and master their own abilities, as opposed to mastering items or relying on companions for their way of navigating the multiverse. So they get the Jump and Kick perk for free, they get the Goomba Stomper perk for free, they get I Will Save You and Someone Save Me, they will get Try Again and Mildly Heroic Jumpers, and at this point they will have spent 600 choice points, because by investing fully they will in fact be spending 200 choice points in the 200 choice point section and 400 choice points in the 400 choice point section, and their next two perks are going to be Secret Star Searcher and Speed Demon, and that is going to mean that they are going to require 200 choice points worth of drawbacks. I might get the math a tiny bit wrong there, but I'm going to assume that that math is correct for the sake of this video, and I will now go ahead and jump on over to the items section. They will be getting the Magnificent Plumber's cap, which is their very own Mario Brothers cap. I really like it. It's just a nice iconic look. They're not going to be getting any of the other items because getting any of the other items would require additional drawbacks. Now we are going to jump on down over to the companion section. They're not going to be doing any companion shenanigans, so we can ignore this for now, and we're going to go to the drawback section. As you can see, these drawbacks are challenges that require someone addressing them head on in a variety of forms or enduring them in a variety of forms, and thus in exchange will confer extra points that someone can use as part of their build. And because of that, we are going to need an additional 200 points based off of our initial budget of 1,000 choice points in order to be able to afford our stuff. We will go ahead and say, I'm glancing through here, and let's see. I'll go ahead and take the iconic headwear drawback, which makes it so that I always need a hat for maximum effectiveness. And let's see, here is another one. Let's go ahead and take, as my last one, we'll just go ahead and take old school style, which is, it's a graphics reducer that makes the world look a little bit simpler and also makes it so that the world's physics are not quite just right. They're not quite identical to real life, and also they are annoying in minor ways. But that makes it so that I can afford to go all in on the plumber perks. But before we go ahead and take a look at everything else, let's go ahead and take a glance at the end section. This is the 3 defaults. You can stay here in this world forever, or at least until you die in this world. And assuming you don't have any perks that would save you from death or anything like that, you could go on to another jump, or you could return home. We're going to assume that Luciano the jumper is going to move on. And finally, here is a notes section. People are going to be able to glance at this for just a second, and then we're going to go back and we're actually going to take a look at the individual perks that we purchased, so that way we can have a talk about what that means moving forward, as well as what that means in this specific jump. Back in the perks section, specifically the plumber perks section of this document. Now that I have done the simplest build that I could possibly think to do, I simply wanted to talk about what this is going to look like for my jumper, how it is going to affect my jumper, and how it might influence my jumper moving forward. I'm also going to do a little bit of a self-insert-y thing with more than just Luciano's name, and I will say that, like me, Luciano was physically disabled and is or at least was a chatty, charisma-based type person before beginning their jump chain experience. But now they have been cured of their disability, they are able to walk and do a lot more than walking, as the very first perk in this jump illustrates. And I want to talk and think about how that would impact and influence them moving forward. Something that is worth keeping in mind with all jumpers is that jumpers usually had a pre-jump chain life that influenced the sort of person that they became and the sort of things that they did and that they were good at. Those things do not stop mattering just because they have entered into a jump chain, just because they have become a jumper. And in fact, those skills and those experiences and those traits of theirs are often very influential into the types of shenanigans that they get up to when they are beginning their chains. We're going to say that Luciano is a very chatty, heroic type sort, which is not especially my personality in real life, but we'll say that for the sake of this jumper as a way to explain why this jumper chose the Mario Brothers origin as opposed to either of the other origins. But now let's think about what these actual perks would do for the jumper themselves. Jump and Kick is a combat and parkour type perk that makes it so that the raw physical things that Mario in Mario 64 could do are things that your jumper can do. That is very important, and I believe that when Luciano was designing their build, they looked at the perks as well as the origins in advance, and that this was the perk that made them realize that they wanted to be a Mario brother. I'm going to say that their physical disability was a significant part of their life, like it's been for me. I myself am both physically disabled and chronically ill, and those things would absolutely be things that I think about and would be things that I'd want to avoid if I had the ability to go on a jump chain and be cured of the maladies that affect me in my daily life. So they get all the cool Mario Brothers stuff, the very basic things like double and triple jumping, as well as Mario and Luigi's powerful punches and kicks. Goomba Stomper is their next perk, and Goomba Stomper is a very interesting perk. One of the things that people need to think about when they are selecting their builds in any jump is think about how it will influence what they can do in future jumps. Because as I've talked about in previous videos, perks are one of these central fiat-backed things. If you purchase a perk, it sticks with you for the length of your chain, at least until you do a gauntlet or you do a sort of drawback that reduces you to your body mod. So you need to keep that in mind when you are thinking about the perks that you get. Part of the reason why I liked Jump and Kick so much was because of the fact that it meant that moving forward, Luciano would have all of these mobility options that are simply beyond what a normal human could do, at least what a normal real life human could do. Maybe not a Super Mario Brothers human. But Goomba Stomper is interesting because it is a sort of alternative way of getting around things. It makes it so that you are a strategizer and so that you see in enemies not foes but opportunities. And I really like that because this is a clever intelligence booster that also modifies how you see the world. And those sorts of perks are very fascinating to me. As you can see, the 100 choice points perks are not especially powerful. In most cases, they will not be especially powerful, but especially as first jump things, they take on new meanings, and they're definitely worth considering, especially because lots of people might want to get the 100 choice points perks from multiple different origins in a jump, as opposed to investing everything like I did. I chose to invest everything mostly because I'm not making a real jumper, but I'm still thinking about the sort of jumper that I'm making. And I wanted to keep a build that would be fairly simple. But now we are at the I will save you and someone saves me type perks. So one of these ones is a reward and motivation perk. I will save you is something that is a sort of willpower booster, which can be very handy, especially if you are going with the default rules that you're going to be staying in a setting for 10 years. If you stay in a setting for 10 years, it can be very easy to get bored, especially if you are in a video game setting that where the story after you complete the video game is not always going to be super clear. I definitely think that that is something worth considering in lots of different types of jumps. I knew when I was making this video that I was going to be doing a video game jump. I just didn't know which video game jump I would be making as like the first jump for a sample jumper, so that way people could get some idea of what it was like. But having a willpower booster is very nice. Willpower boosters are always good, especially depending on the types of jumps that you go to after this. Generic Cubicle is one of my favorite jumps in the world, and it is a completely mundane jump where you work an office job for 10 years, and the whole point is to be at an office for 10 years. You can do other things too, but it's still going to be something that is a significant chunk of your time. So having a willpower booster in some way, shape, or form is going to be very handy. I very much appreciate having this perk. Someone Save Me is a very handy perk that makes it so that your friends are always there for you in some way, shape, or form. If you get trapped somewhere, your friends will do their best to try and save you. It is just a handy quality of life perk. I very much enjoy it. It's not going to be something that is going to be hugely overpowered unless you are doing very silly shenanigans in a jump and you get caught doing very silly shenanigans, but it is still something that gives you a way out. Theoretically, it means that you should not give up hope even when a situation looks hopeless, even when you feel like you've been beaten, as long as you are a nice person or you have some other way of making friends and connecting with people. Very cool perk. Try Again is one of the more interesting perks that the plumbers will get in this particular jump, because what Try Again does is make it so that you have a much harder time being killed. It is effectively a kind of mini one-up. It is something that helps mitigate the normal rules that death will cause a chain fail, and I very much enjoy it because this is a good assurance type perk. An assurance type perk means that even if you do something risky, you probably will not immediately face the worst kinds of consequences for your actions. You will still face a cost. If you lose a life, that is still a significant loss. It's still a significant defeat, but it is not the end of your chain. And it means that you can be a little bit braver than you might otherwise try to be. That's always something that's nice to have, especially from the beginning. It's also kind of nice that even though this doesn't really feel quite as powerful as some of the other one-ups, because it's not supposed to be, it still makes it so that you are able to have a little bit of a breather in case you start to feel like a situation's getting a little bit too tense for you. Now we are at the mildly heroic helpers. This is another fun one that makes it so that your allies, no matter how helpless and no matter how small, are able to help you in some sort of way. The way that they help you won't be ultra significant most of the time, but it's something that can make a minor difference. It's a quality of life booster. You're going to notice that part of the reason why I chose this jump is that there's lots of tiny quality of life things. I very much enjoy quality of life perks. I feel like quality of life perks are surprisingly underrated because they can bolster the experience that a jumper has in a jump in a number of subtle ways. In this particular case, it makes it so that you get a reward when you do good things and when you help people out. That is always nice, and it's always a good reason for a jumper to be a good person, or at least to behave as a good person would behave. It's something that encourages you to think about how your jumper would act in any given situation and would motivate you to give them a more consistent character, because if they have the more consistent character that consistently activates the perks, they're constantly getting lots of little things. We are now at the capstone perks. If you have never seen any of my other videos, you may not have heard this term, but a capstone perk refers to a perk that is located at the end of a perk line. It is always the most expensive perks. Some perks have some jumps have capstone boosters, and capstone boosters are perks that are usually undiscounted that magnify the effects of a capstone perk. We are not going to see that in this specific jump, but we definitely will be covering jumps in the future that have capstone boosters and capstone boosted perks. But for right now, let's go ahead and take a look at Secret Star Searcher. Secret Star Searcher is the completionist perk. It makes it easier for you to find hidden things and makes it easier for you to find hidden areas. This is a very cool perk. It's a very fun one that makes it so that you are far more likely to complete something to the maximum available tier, especially if you are doing something like competing in a treasure hunt or you are in a race to secure a valuable resource. This is not going to be a massive game changer most of the time, but even the perk description itself says that on very rare occasions, this may even force such a location into existence where none would otherwise be, to give you something to find, to reward your completionist efforts. And I think that is rad. That is a very cool, surprisingly potent capstone perk given the origin. Super Mario 64 is hardly a game or a setting with like world altering stakes, even though the stakes are surprisingly high. Princess Peach has been kidnapped and she's a sovereign ruler of a nation, so making sure that she is okay is an important thing to do, even if it's not going to necessarily divert the course of history. Speed Demon is a bizarre perk, but it's also kind of neat. What it does is it turns you into the speed demon type character, speed runner type character from those terminal animation videos. It makes it so that you have access to abilities that are based on speed and also makes it easier for you to speed run things. It doesn't necessarily grant you super speed in and of itself, but it still makes it so that you can glitch reality itself and alter the world in ways that make speed a more powerful resource and in ways that are good for you and allow you to do things that you wouldn't otherwise do because of the speed that you have. This is something that makes it so that you can like no clip through walls in ways that are beneficial to you and allows you to do lots of tiny things that are surprisingly powerful once you've figured out how to properly leverage them. Moving forward, this perk would make it so that the faster you do things and the more you try to incorporate speed into your strategies, the more successful you are. This perk would be surprisingly powerful if after this you went to a jump that had the flash or had something like Supersonic and Sonic the Hedgehog, those types of things, because it makes speed into a tool in your arsenal and also allows you to do things that you shouldn't otherwise be able to do because of speed. That is something that can be quite handy in the right hands, but of course you have to be creative with it. This perk is effectively sort of experiment bait. It encourages you to be creative and to think outside the box when you are trying to handle a situation, and I think that it is very rad. I do think that it is worth the 600 points that it costs, which is nice. I've definitely seen 600 choice points level perks that do not really deserve their cost, but this one definitely does because it rewards you for thinking outside of the box and for going fast, you know? Now we are going to go ahead and head on over to the items section. We are going to take a look at Magnificent Plumber's Cap. It is also worth noting that I did some math and I believe that the total points you would need if you wanted to invest fully in a perk and item line is 1,800 points. I may be a little off in that, but I'm fairly certain that that's the number that you would need. And if you have that, whether it is through banked choice points or some sort of meta thing, or you just did the way that things are designed and you took the appropriate number of drawbacks to get those additional 800 points, that's very rad. I can go ahead. For those who are curious, I could talk about the other items, and I think that I will do that as well, at least in the plumber line, and then I will leave everything else to other people to discover at their own pace. I would absolutely love for you to tell me about the builds that you made, so that way we could think about how our jumpers would interact if they were in the same space. It's worth noting that jump chains are inherently single player, but there are a number of clever people who've designed ways for jump chains to involve multiple people all at once, and for jump chains to involve multiple jumpers all at once. And in fact, you could argue that you could create a multiplayer jump chain experience by letting other players, instead of having their own jumpers, control companions who get imported and get to do builds. I think that that's a perfectly reasonable way of going about it, because oftentimes in co-op games, the main player is not equal but is in fact superior to the other players in a number of subtle ways. So this could just be one manifestation of that if that's something that you really wanted to do. If you wanted to do a jump chain with your partner or with your families, those are all perfectly valid ways to go about it. And I'm all about encouraging people to have more fun, not to have fun the quote right way. So now that we are looking at the item section, people have definitely had a little bit of time to actually read the items, but for those of you who have not done that yet, the item that we're going to be talking about that is actually a part of Luciano's build is the Magnificent Plumber's Cap, which is an outfit type item. That means that it's something that he can wear. I said he. We'll say that their pronouns are like me and that they use they, them. We'll say we'll say that they are a he slash him slash they slash them type jumper. That's fine. But the way that this item works is that it is a flashy item and it serves as a good luck charm. So if you wear it, then you have the ability to turn away harsh blows or at least make them land lighter or hurt less, which can be very handy. Effectively, this item is a sort of subtle armor, and if you wear it, you are a little bit better at taking hits and you are a little bit more sturdy in a very subtle, indirect way. The next item is the minigames item. The minigames item is effectively a way for you to boost your skills and a way for you to test your luck through a set of minigames that are designed and maintained by Toads. This is an adventure bait item. An adventure bait item is an item that does not start off at full power, but encourages you to go and complete certain objectives for you to crank it all the way up to its maximum power. Adventure bait items are some of my favorite items because they encourage you to use them in ways that they may not have been used in their source material, and they also serve as story hooks for things that you can do once the main plot has been completed of any particular setting. So in this particular setting, you could try to create more mini games with however long of the 10 years that you have once you have rescued Peach, or once you have defeated and permanently enslaved Peach if you have this item and you're an evil jumper for whatever reason. The next item is the warp pipe. A warp pipe is a very handy utility item that makes it so that you can travel long distances in a very short period of time. This is a set of warp pipes, the green pipes that Mario will jump in this game and in other games, that take him from place to place and often offer you the ability to navigate an underground place for a few minutes and then leave the underground place and be at a location very, very far away. This is a very fun item. This item is one that you have to be clever about importing because in a lot of settings it would not make a lot of sense. Let's say, for example, that Luciano's next jump is the generic cubicle jump, which it might be. We might actually just end up creating a chain with Luciano as the jumper where I talk about different jump docs as Luciano and I explore them from both a real life perspective and what they would be like for a jumper. But in that case, let's say that Mario did the 1800 choice point build and got all of the items and all of the perks from the Super Mario game, from the plumber set, and they have the warp pipes. So in this particular setting, the function of warp pipes makes a lot of sense. You use a warp pipe, you go into an underground or otherwise bizarre liminal space. You're there, you complete an objective, you get a reward, maybe a power star, maybe you get a bunch of coins, maybe you get a 1-up mushroom, that kind of thing. But then you go from there to generic cubicle jump, which is a version of Earth. It's not the Earth that the jumper is from, or at least it's not the real version of the Earth that the jumper is from. And the whole point there is to have an office job for 10 years. At the end of the 10 years, you get to take whatever money you made with you and you get to keep paying that money. You get to keep getting paid that money over the course of however long it took you to get that money in the first place. So if you got paid every 2 weeks at the end of generic cubicle jump, you would get paid every 2 weeks moving forward into your chain. But how would you import the warp pipe item into that specific jump? I personally think it's pretty easy. You would get a warp pipe at your home that connects to important locations throughout the setting. So let's say you moved and when you were imported into the jump, you were imported in Washington, D.C. You would have a warp pipe at your home or somewhere nearby. You would have one at your job. You would have one at a local metro station, that kind of thing. And you could enter it, and then you would be put into an underground hub where you could travel until you find the right warp pipe that takes you to wherever you need to go. And that travel would be substantially shorter than if you tried to walk or if you tried to even drive to that particular place. Boom. The final item in this particular origin is the question block, and the question blocks are very fun items because this is how you get the power-ups that were part of Super Mario 64 and part of Super Mario 64 DS, which this is also a jump chain of, as people might have noticed at the very top of the jump doc on the first page. So with this, you are able to find question mark blocks that are in real life as opposed to being in the video game, and you are able, well, real life for your jumper, but you are able to hit those and then power-ups will come out of them. The power-ups in question are the metal cap, the vanish cap, and the wing cap. The metal cap turns you into metal you, which makes you harder to hit, it makes you harder to hurt, it makes you slower, and it also makes you stronger. I'm actually not sure if it makes you slower. I feel like it makes you slower. Then there's the vanish cap, which turns you invisible and also turns you incorporeal, allowing you to pass through fences, chains, bars, and certain thin walls. And then there's the wing cap, which at the apex or zenith of your jumps will allow you to fly for a short little while. And all of these are very cool items. Importing them into different settings, I feel like is a pretty easy thing to do. And obviously, they have their own benefits that are self-explanatory. Now, as you can see, this is what this would look like. Someone who went all in on the plumber line would have a handful of surprisingly potent quality of life perks, things that make it easier for them to be more motivated. They'd have hardcore parkour skills. They would have willpower boosters and better luck when it comes to getting out of sticky situations, so long as they have friends who care about them and things like that. And they would have very neat items. They would have these mini games. They would have the warp pipe transportation system. They would have the question blocks. They would have lots of cool stuff moving forward. And as you can see, it is entirely possible for someone to create a build for something like this in a handful of minutes. The ways that jump chains work in the real world for you as the author is fortunately pretty simple. You go and select a order of jump docs, you fill them out, and you keep track of the things that you purchased in those jump docs moving forward. What you do with those jump docs is entirely up to you. There are thousands of jumpers all over the world. There's thousands of members of this community who have never shared what it is that they do and what they think of their jumpers, and that's perfectly valid. I am here to help you have fun. I am never here to tell you what to do with the fun that you are having. So my objective is simple. I want to encourage you to go and try out this hobby, and I want to encourage you to potentially have a great time. And if you enjoy it, I would love for you to check out my channel. I would love for you to let me know. I would love for you to share how it is that jump chains have influenced and impacted you, and if you found these videos helpful. I know that they're probably not the most helpful things in the world. I know that their length is a little bit longer than I would like, but I'm having fun creating them, and I know that for the people who need them, these videos I think are worth watching and they're worth chatting with me about. I would love to make them better. I plan to make them better as I get more experience, but I hope that this has been helpful for you. I know it's been helpful for me. I hope that you have a wonderful day, and I will definitely see you again soon.